Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be continuing on with my mission of trying to repurpose all my skinny jeans, and in today's episode we'll be making a baguette bag like this. I'm just gonna jump right in. First up, I'm drafting a pattern for the bag on some baking paper. If you're planning on following along with this tutorial, I'll try to link you guys a pattern to download in the description, as it's not super clear what I'm drawing in this video. I'll also link another video that I followed when making this bag, just in case it helps. So after all my pieces are drawn, I cut them out. And this is what your pattern pieces should look like. For the fabric, I'm using a pair of jeans that I cut up for a previous project and another pair for some contrast. I'm trying to lay my pattern so that I can still use the leftover fabric for something else. It doesn't seem like there's enough material for the body anyway, so I decided to fold these panels in half so that the body will be sort of like patchwork. And once I'm happy with the placement, I'm tracing the pattern onto the fabric with a fabric pen and cutting it out with some seam allowance. And now for the other panels. I wanted the other half of the body to be the darker denim, but I didn't want the sides to match, if that makes sense. So on one side, I want the light denim to be on the left, and then when you flip the bag, I wanted the light denim to be on the right. So that took a bit of figuring out, but we got there in the end. For the straps, I didn't think that the darker denim would look that good, and I did have some weird long pieces left from my previous project, which I kind of wanted to use up. So I decided to sew these triangle pieces together to join them up to make a big enough panel for the strap.
Yay, extra fabric.
And I just had the perfect amount of fabric for one side panel, and for the other side panel I had to get a bit creative and undo the seams of the jeans so that it would fit. And so here are all the pieces that you need for the outside of the bag. Even though this will take a lot more effort, but I strongly recommend to line the bag because it'll just keep all of the seams safe and will make using the bag a lot better. For the lining, I'm using some really cheap fabric that I've also used in a previous project, and I'm pretty much cutting out 2 body panels and 2 side panels, just as I did before. And we'll return to the lining a bit later. Now, the first step of putting the bag pieces together is to join the 2 halves of each body panel together. I'm just lining up the middle seam and pinning it together before sewing, first using a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch to reinforce it. And with both panels done, I've pinned them together and I'm just making sure that they're all even and look the same. And now we need to join the 2 side panels together. Again, with the outside facing in, I'm pinning the big ends together before sewing it up, and the seam should be the bottom of the bag. And now I'm pinning the side piece to one of the body panels. I've lined the top of the side piece with the top corner of the body panel, making sure that the outside of the body panel and the side panel are facing each other. So if you're sewing this with 4 body panels like I am, it's a good idea to try to line up the seams together on the bottom as well. It is a little bit awkward to pin the corners, but it should start to resemble a 3-dimensional shape. Kind of like the walls of a house. And once it's all pinned, it's time to sew. I'm not gonna lie, the corners were pretty difficult to sew. It helps to go really slow and make sure that you're turning the fabric as you sew, but not too much, otherwise the corners will end up a bit pointy. And as you can see, I'm stopping to put the foot up to straighten out these folds so that I don't sew over them. And this is what it should look like. One side did end up being a bit too square for my liking, so I went ahead and redid that corner and it ended up looking a bit better. Now the second body panel is a bit more tricky as I want to make sure that the seams match with the other body panel as well as the bottom seam on the side of the bag. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin this first, and then pinning the rest of the body panel as I did before. And it's getting exciting. It's starting to resemble a bag-like shape. And same again, I'm sewing the body to the side, making sure to go slow with the corners. Ta-da! I'm not too sure why I didn't film this, but for the lining, I essentially repeated these same steps with the lining fabric pieces. But for one side of the body panel, I added a smaller piece of folded over fabric with a stitch down the middle to make 2 pockets. And one other important thing is to make sure to leave a small opening on the bottom of one side, like this. And now to make the shoulder strap, I'm folding over the strap so that the outside is facing in, and after pinning it down, I'm sewing it. I'm trying to use a chopstick to turn it inside out because that's the best thing I've got. I think there are better ways of turning straps inside out, but I didn't really think about it until after I've sewn it together. And it is a bit of a struggle, but after a while it's done. To close the bag, I wanted to use one of the zips that I salvaged, but even the longest one that I had is a bit too short. So I've decided to do a bit of a dodgy fix by adding a bit of fabric to the ends of the zips to lengthen it. You can avoid this obviously by getting a zip that is as long as the opening of the bag, but I just wanted to use up the zips that I had. To attach the zip to the bag, I'm pinning it to one side with a zip handle, or whatever it's called, facing inside. And then when I'm sewing, I'm only sewing along the side, leaving the ends open. And this is how it should look like. Turning it the right way out to check that it looks okay, and it's not too bad, even at the ends of the zip. To attach the strap, I've turned the bag back inside out, and I'm pulling the strap through the opening that I've left at the end of the zip. And basically the idea is to just sew across this area, making sure to close it all up. And I do the same thing on the other side, just making sure that the strap inside the bag is not twisted around or anything. And the outside of the bag is done. Since it's gotten dark, I've stopped filming there and sort of forgot about this project for a couple of months. Oops. So I've tried to straighten out the lining inside the bag as much as possible and line up the side seams to each other. And just to reiterate, the lining should be turned inside out, so the stitches and the messy stuff should be on the inside and the nice side should face the outside. Then I'm pinning the lining to the bag. Basically, I want to sew along the same stitch that attaches the zip to the bag. And this part is definitely where I had to trust the process, as I wasn't really computing as to how it would all end up on the right side. I also ended up sewing the long ends without sewing across where the strap is, because the corners of the lining didn't really match up too great with the outside of the bag. And so I just wanted to see what it looked like when I turned it all the right way. And to get the bag the right way out, you just pull the outside of the bag through the hole in the lining that we've left earlier. And after a bit of a struggle, I was a little surprised to see that it actually worked. The lining also covered the inside of the bag pretty well, and I didn't need to go back and finish the corners that I've left. And all that's left to do is to close up the hole in the lining. You can do an invisible stitch by hand, but I was a little lazy at this point and decided to just sew across, but turning the edge inside so that it doesn't fray. And that's the bag done. How cool does it look? I think my favorite thing about this is that it's very functional. It's got a zip and lining with pockets, so I can definitely use this bag for every day. I think it's also quite on trend with the Y2K revival, and yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. I think it's a great way to use up some scrap pieces of fabric, but also it's a pretty great project in and of itself. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. If you tried to make a bag like this, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.